I think if you love cars, you love the Defender. We have a Defender, and my wife, she's had a Defender in one version or other since she was 18 years old, since she started driving. And our kids even learn how to drive on a Defender. They learn how to drive on the desert in Kuwait because not only is Defender, of course, great highway driving, but you could drive it. It's great for off-roading. You could drive it on the desert. And that was the place where my kids learned how to drive a car. That's why the Defender is the vehicle that's basically adapted for the city, but also for beyond. The Defender 90 is the original two-door Defender body design. It's a smaller silhouette, but fits for journeys of all size. There's 3D surround cameras with clear sight ground view, so it lets you see underneath the vehicle and anticipate obstacles and rough terrain. Again, for the urban city and beyond. There's a next-gen Pivi Pro infotainment system, which of course is great for 3 kids driving in the back seat, and intuitive driver displays that are customizable to your journey. Explore the Defender 90 at LandRoverUSA.com.
Many people debate, should I get my book published by a traditional publisher like HarperCollins or Simon & Schuster or Random House, or should I self-publish? And for many years, for many decades, there was a stigma about self-publishing. It was called vanity publishing. You would pay a publisher to make 1,000 copies of your book, and then you would hand it out to your friends and try to get it sold in a bookstore. By the way, some books were very successful that started off as vanity publishing. One example that I could think of is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which eventually was published by a regular publisher and sold millions, but originally he just printed up a bunch and was handing them out. And self-publishing is when, in a nutshell, you upload it to Amazon, you upload it to BarnesandNoble.com, maybe you upload it to Apple Books, and you yourself are the publisher. I'm going to focus on that kind of self-publishing versus traditional publishing. We're not going to be talking about vanity publishing at all because there is no need for you to pay a dime to publish your book, except for services that we'll talk about in a second. But even then, we're going to do this on a shoestring.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
First up, what are the benefits of traditional publishing using a HarperCollins? And I would say of my 25 books that I've written, about half of them were traditionally published. I've published with HarperCollins a few times. I've published with Hay House. I've published several books with Wiley. I've used other traditional publishers. And about half of my books are self-published. And I'll get down to the specifics of how well they've done in a second. But the benefits of traditional publishing are, in some cases, you get in advance, meaning they might say, Jack, here's $5,000, go write your book. And the first $5,000 that you would have made through publishing your book with us, we get to keep. We'll give you the money in advance, so we get to keep it when it comes in. And then every dollar that comes in after that, you get 15% and we get 85%. So that's a typical traditional publishing deal. Now, are advances is big or small? I will tell you, for my first 3 books, all my advances were between $5,000 and $10,000. So not a lot, even though they sold very well. My first book was more in the finance space, and it was considered a bestseller. Some publications had listed it as one of the best financial books ever written, but it still didn't make my next advance any higher. My next advance was about $10,000. And you get that advance in parts. You get the first part when you sign the contract. You get the second part when you deliver a draft. You get the third part when the hardcover comes out. You get the fourth part years later when the paperback comes out, or something like that. I have received good advances, but that's only after I had millions of followers on social media. And I want to state, even then, advances in general throughout the industry have been going down. Every year, the average advance gets lower and lower. And again, the average advance is 0. So even if you're used to a $10,000 advance, your next advance with a traditional publisher might be $3,000. So advances are getting lower and lower. So what's the advantage of going with a traditional publisher? Well, traditional publishers will say, we'll get your book in bookstores. But ultimately, The only big bookstores left are Barnes and Noble. So there's a Barnes and Noble in every major city. Barnes and Noble was criticized for a long time because they were driving out of business independent booksellers, just like Amazon now is driving out of business Barnes and Noble. But okay, there's Barnes and Noble, there's bookstores in the airports and so on. Can the publisher get your book into Barnes and Noble? Yes, but it's up to Barnes and Noble. The publisher doesn't make the decision. Barnes and Noble makes the decision. And a lot of people don't know this, but Barnes and Noble charges publishers in certain cases. When you walk into a bookstore and you see a table that says new books, chances are every book, the publisher of that book paid for that book to be on that shelf. It's not so easy for publishers to get your book into every bookstore. And airport bookstores, for instance, I believe an airport bookstore, and this price changes and it depends on timing and it depends on the airport, but airport bookstores usually charge about $20,000 to be in a chain on the East Coast and maybe the West Coast. Hudson Books is the chain that's in many airports. You have to pay about $20,000, maybe more, maybe less, maybe it's per month. I don't know all the details, but you have to pay to get your books in there if you're a publisher. And most books, again, the statistics change every day. Look this up for yourself. Most books are sold via Amazon. And I'm not talking about Kindle books, but paperbacks, hardcovers, audiobooks. In fact, audiobooks are incredibly important. And, Audible is the main place people buy audiobooks. And you could just make your own audiobook and upload it to Audible. No problem. You could do that for free. Again, I am not sure about the benefit of a traditional book publisher. Now, that said, I think, again, self-publishing has had some stigma in the past. So it's nice to have a traditional publisher. It's nice to be chosen and feel like, Penguin Books likes me or Simon & Schuster likes me. But you have to figure out what your goal is. Is your goal to sell a lot of books? Is your goal to make a lot of money? Or is your goal to win a lot of prizes and bestseller awards? Let's talk about the bestseller list for a second. Very rare for a self-published book to get on the bestseller list. Now, it's not impossible. I've had several self-published books like Choose Yourself and the Choose Yourself Guide to Wealth make it to the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. But in general, bestseller lists usually only have books published by the mainstream publishers on the bestseller list. The New York Times bestseller list, I don't know if they ever have a self-published book on the New York Times bestseller list. By the way, the New York Times bestseller list isn't the best-selling books. It's just a list of whoever the employee is at the New York Times who makes that list. It's just a list of books that they think are the best. There's no metric by which they decide what books go on the New York Times bestseller list. So there are companies out there that you could pay who will call those people up at the New York Times and lobby for your book to be on the bestseller list. And I know one guy, he's 71 books out of 71 that he's managed to get on the New York Times bestseller list, whether they sold well or not. So a lot of this stuff in the traditional industry, I consider kind of BS. But the most important reasons why I love to self-publish is I'm in control of the whole process. I'm in control of the design. I'm in control of the title. But even more importantly, I'm in control of the marketing and the pricing. And pricing and marketing go hand in hand. Maybe I want to price the Kindle at 99 cents for a while to build up a large audience of people who've seen the book. And then later they'll want to buy the paperback or the hardcover as a gift, or because so many people bought it at 99 cents, it will get a lot of reviews. Then word will get out. Then I raise the price. A traditional publisher will never let you do that. They'll never let you publish the e-version at 99 cents to get a large amount of users. They just don't think that way. When they publish a book, the most important time for them is the first few weeks. And then usually they just forget about your book. So they're going to price it at the maximum price they think they can, let it run for a week, and then they forget about you. When Choose Yourself came out, I was selling it as a hardcover, paperback, audiobook, and a Kindle. So I think I had the paperback at $9.99. Maybe I had the hardcover at $19.99. The audiobook, I had about $12, which was the lowest you could price it. And the ebook or the Kindle version, I had for 99 cents. And it was doing very well. But then one person called me and said, listen, I have an email list of millions of people, and I would like to sell your book on my list, the hardcover version. But we need you to write a few extra chapters. We need you to not price the Kindle version so cheaply just for a week or two while we sell to our list. And he listed a couple other things he needed. So I wrote a couple of extra chapters. Again, something that would never happen with a traditional publisher. Raised the price on the ebook to like $30, something like that. He sold the hardcover for $20 per book, even though he had them printed for $2 per book, because I was involved in the process of how he printed up the book. And he split the revenues with me 50-50. So after 2 weeks, he sold 100,000 books for $20. We made $200,000, sent me a check for $100,000. Again, this would never happen with a traditional publisher. I was completely in charge of my own marketing, all the deals I made, all the special marketing ideas that I had. And we'll talk about marketing in a second. So self-publishing for me has resulted in more copies sold and more money made. And also, by the way, and this is very important for people who are trying to write a book in 30 days, you also control the timing. So with this book, and I love the publisher, I love the editor, they were really good to me. But when I signed the deal for this book, it was in mid to late 2019. I think it was around October 2019. The book didn't come out till April of 2021. So it's like a year and a half later. That's annoying. I really dislike that part. But I've self-published books. Sometimes I have the idea on a Friday, or at least in one case, I had the idea on a Friday. I self-published by Monday. When you can control the timing, there is so much freedom in that. And so I recommend self-publishing. Let's talk about the stigma for a second. Are self-published books worse than traditionally published books? So a friend of mine, Hugh Howey, he is the author of the science fiction series Wool, and he's been on my podcast. He once did a study. In general, on Amazon, do self-published books have higher star rankings or lower star rankings than traditionally published books? And he found that self-published books actually have slightly higher rankings, meaning the readers think they're higher quality than traditionally published books. He also counted the number of reviews. And self-published books, on average, tend to have more reviews than traditionally published books. And they also have slightly higher ranks, on average. Not the highest ranked ones, but on average, self-published books had higher ranks on Amazon than traditionally published books. So self-published books were actually higher quality and sold better. I think that's got a long way to removing the stigma. Also, just make up the name of a publishing company. And it's not like when you hand someone your book at a party or someone you meet, no one has ever asked me, well, wait a second, before I take this book, who published it? Who was the publisher? Was it Viking, or was it Penguin, or was it HarperCollins? No one's ever asked me if a book was self-published or not. But I am really happy to discuss and recommend self-publishing. Not against traditional publishing. There are benefits, but I think I went over all the benefits and pros and cons. And to me, the pros and cons of self-publishing are a little bit better. So the timing, the marketing, the ability to price, the ability to control the entire design and editing process and so on. Now, traditional publishing does give you a really great editor, but those editors, they're busy with 30 other writers. So you're not quite sure you're getting their full attention or not, but you might be. I don't know. So again, you decide, but for the purposes of this, self-publish. It has a lot of benefits. And my own personal experience, I've made more money and have sold more copies, and more people know about my writing because of my self-published books than my traditionally published books. And again, I'm about 50-50. 50% traditionally published, 50% self-published.
I think if you love cars, you love the Defender. We have Defender, and my wife, she's had a Defender in one version or other since she was 18 years old, since she started driving. And our kids even learn how to drive on a Defender. They learn how to drive on the desert in Kuwait because not only is Defender, of course, great highway driving, but you could drive it. It's great for off-roading. You could drive it on the desert. And that was the place where my kids learned how to drive a car. That's why the Defender is the vehicle that's basically adapted for the city, but also for beyond. The Defender 90 is the original two-door Defender body design. It's a smaller silhouette, but fits for journeys of all size. There's 3D surround cameras with clear sight ground view, so it lets you see underneath the vehicle and anticipate obstacles and rough terrain. Again, for the urban city and beyond. There's a next-gen Pivi Pro infotainment system, which of course is great for 3 kids driving in the back seat. and intuitive driver displays that are customizable to your journey. Explore the Defender 90 at LandRoverUSA.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
Instacart is on a mission to have you not leave the couch this basketball season, because between the pregame rituals and the postgame interviews, it can be difficult to find time for everything else. So let Instacart take care of your game day snacks or weekly restocks and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Because we hear it's bad luck to be hungry on game day. So download the Instacart app today and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees apply for 3 orders in 14 days. Excludes restaurants.
What do you do when you finish the book? Well, first off, don't forget to celebrate. It's very important to celebrate these small successes along the journey. You don't want to get too anxious immediately about what the next steps are and how many copies this will sell and who will get upset at me and how much money will I make. You wrote a book. This is great. Congratulations. And again, don't forget to celebrate it and enjoy that moment. Now, what do you need to do next? Well, you've written the first draft, and the first thing I would do is make a second and third draft, meaning do some of the suggestions I have said earlier. Read the book, or at least parts of the book, out loud to see how it sounds and feel if there's any moments that you feel cringeworthy and feel if anything sounds funny. And then go through and do some of the techniques I recommend. First, check the FK score of the book and of the different chapters, which chapters are more readable than others and how you can edit them to be a little simpler. And then one technique I mentioned is go to each chapter and take out the first and last paragraph and see what it reads like. Maybe even take out the first chapter of the book and the last chapter of the book, see what it reads like. Just experiment with these different ideas that we've spoken about before and read through the book. Some things will stick out at you right away, like, oh, I wrote about that in this chapter. I don't need to include it in this chapter. And you'll start editing. Do your first edit, your second edit, make the language as simple as possible. Again, check the FK score. But now we have a serious first draft. What do you do next? Here's what you need to professionally self-publish your book. And we're going to do this on a shoestring budget. So here are the people you need. You need a line editor. A line editor is someone who simply check the grammar for you and fix the grammar. You need a book editor. What's a book editor? Well, a book editor might say to you, maybe this chapter belongs here. Maybe this chapter belongs here. You don't really need this story here, but maybe you need a better story here. So a book editor will have real questions about the book that they'll write all over the book, and you need to respond to them. Explain this better. You explain this too much. Tell a better story here. Or this story is not so clear to me. Or why is this story in this section? Or why is this section coming after this section? So you want a good book editor. Then you need a cover designer. Now, there are plenty of places where you can get a free cover done, even on Amazon. They have a whole process where they can give you a free cover. But I wouldn't do that. I would use a professional cover designer. And then this is a category many people forget, but you needed an interior book designer. So what does an interior book designer do? They look at the font of the book. They look at the margins around the pages. They figure out what kind of pages you need. What should be the color of the pages? There's very small differences. Is it white? Is it manila? and so on. So you need an interior book designer. And finally, I do encourage you to make an audiobook. I still get checks every month from Audible on books I wrote 10 years ago. There's over 200 million readers of audiobooks. I don't know if it's the United States or the world, but it's quite a big number, because often the checks and royalties I get on audiobooks are bigger than I get on paperbacks or hardcovers or ebooks. So audiobooks is a big and growing category. Particularly, people listen to audiobooks just like they listen to podcasts. They listen to them on the commute to work. They listen to them in the gym. So these are times when they can't be watching something. There might not be readers, but this is an opportunity for them to, quote unquote, read a book by listening to the audiobook. So you want to do a professionally done audiobook, and we'll discuss that in a second.
This is the thing about me. I'm lazy. And I've got a little bit of pride. I don't want to drive to the liquor store and then not know what wine to get and have to ask, oh, what wine should I get? And then they say like dumb questions. Well, do you like red or do you like white? What country do you like? I don't know anything. So that's why I love that I could go to Naked Wines, the sponsor of this podcast. I go to nakedwines.com, just order wine and have it delivered straight to my door. And look, I don't want to brag or anything, but I was sober for about, 2-3 years, completely sober. It was ruining my life. But I am proud to say I broke that sobriety by having a drink of my favorite naked wine, Brothers Miller. I got some naked wines delivered to my door. Brothers Miller, had a glass, ended that sobriety thing. That's boring. And look, I wanted to be the most interesting person at the party. That's what Naked Wines does. I went crazy. So look, this podcast is sponsored by Naked Wines. It's 2025, but don't shop for wine like it's 2005. Naked Wines is a service that directly connects you to the world's finest independent winemakers so you can get award-winning wine delivered straight to your door. Use the code JAMES for the code and the password at nakedwines.com and get their incredible deal of 6 bottles for just $39.99. I particularly like the Brothers Mill Chardonnay. You know why? Because I like Chardonnay because it's a little colder. I convince myself I'm drinking a cool glass of refreshing water on a hot summer beach, even though it's the middle of winter, and lose my inhibitions. I can really tell her what I think. I mean, if you're married, you know what I'm saying. My voice has gotten higher and higher pitched every single year I've been married. What's wrong, honey? Do you want me? Did I not clean the bathroom? No problem. Naked Wines, you lose those inhibitions and your voice gets low again. Look, the couple that drinks Naked Wines together gets naked together. And Naked Wines has been around for over 15 years and funds over 90 independent winemakers around the world with no commitments or membership fees. You can enjoy Naked Wines hassle-free. And don't forget, you can pause or cancel at any time. So just because you've got a trip coming up doesn't mean you can't enjoy Naked Wines before or after that much-needed vacation. Now is the time to join the Naked Wines community. Head to nakedwines.com/James, click Enter Voucher, put in my name, that's the code, James, for both the code and the password, and you'll get 6 bottles of wine for just $39.99 with shipping included. So that's $100 off your first 6 bottles at nakedwines.com/James, and use the code and password James for 6 bottles of wine for $39.99.
Mochi Health is here to help you start your weight loss journey with caring, personalized support. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who truly listen and understand your unique needs. Eligible patients can access affordable GLP-1 medications delivered right to their door each month. No insurance? No problem. Mochi Health accepts FSA and HSA, making care accessible and affordable. And with 24/7 customer service, you'll never feel alone on your path to better health. Get started with Mochi Health today. Take the free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership. That's joinmochi.com with promo code AUDIO40.
Congratulations again, because by the time this section is relevant for you, you will have written, produced, and published your book. So What do we do first? Again, be happy about it, celebrate, go out to dinner, take your loved ones out to dinner, feel good about yourself. If anything, you could stop right here knowing you've done a quality book that is going to be read by people. You could send that book out to your customers or clients, or depending on what you do, to family. Again, there are many ways to monetize writing a book, the least of which is making money from your book. So you could use your book to perhaps get consulting gigs, to perhaps get speaking engagements, to start a podcast, many, many things. But right now, let's talk about some basic ideas for marketing your book. And again, there's no magic formula this is the best way to market your book, because if there was such a magic formula, everybody would have a bestseller. Some of it's a combination of right time, right place. Some of it's a combination of luck. Some of it is about how much preparation you put in advance of the book publishing. And by advance, I mean maybe years in advance. You start blogging or speaking or podcasting about the topics of your book. Let's talk about what you could do right now to market your book. The number one most effective method to market your book is through an email list. Actually, before I even say that, the number one way possibly to market your book is having ideas to generate publicity. But let's put that aside for a second. I will talk about that. But the number one most effective tool to market your book is an email list. First off, your email list, and then the email lists of other people. So your email list is a list of people who maybe have been following your writings for months or perhaps years. And you've compiled a list of people who want to be notified every time you write a new article or make a new video or write a new book or have a new podcast. And they want to hear from you. These are people who have literally raised their hand and said, hey, tell me when you've got something new, because I'll read whatever you write. So an email list is a great place to market your book. And it's also a great place to find test readers and reviewers for your book. Now, how do you build an email list? If you Google email list companies, you can find many companies that will support your email list. But let's just stick with something simple. Go to substack.com, and it takes a few minutes to sign up. Call your email list whatever you want. And now you have a link for people to sign up to your email list. You can put prior articles you've written, prior blog posts, and just kick off the email list with an archives. And now every time you write a blog anywhere, also put it on your Substack email list, and it'll go out to everybody who signs up for the list. Well, how do you get people to sign up? This is a process that happens over months, maybe even years or more. Some people grow their list very quickly to 100,000 readers. Some people struggle depending on the topic and grow to 1,000 readers. But doesn't matter how big it is, everything is a start. So whatever you do now is going to be useful for the second book, the third book, the fourth book, and so on. I will tell you how I initially built my email list. I was blogging quite a bit. So I would write an article almost every day, sometimes every few days. And I would put the article on my website, and I would put it on LinkedIn, and I would put it on Medium, and anywhere else I thought people might be able to read it. So let's say your book is about positive psychology or about happiness or about habits. There are various websites out there that are niche websites that are always looking for articles about the topics you wrote in your book. So you can pitch them, hey, I just wrote this book. Can I write an article or write a bunch of articles for your website? And in each article you write, you put, if you like this article, here's the link, sign up for my email list. And over time, you build up your email list. Another place that's great to get traffic for your email list is places like Quora or Reddit. So on Quora, which has over 200 million users, I used Quora very heavily. I would answer any questions at all related to the topics I was writing about in my books. And I would really work hard on each question, and I would answer hundreds of questions. Ultimately, I think I still am the 5th or 6th most followed person on Quora out of the 200 million users. And I've had over 110 million views on my answers on Quora. Quora is a Q&A site, a question and answer site. So again, I'm not saying this that I'm such a great writer that this happened. I'm saying I put in the time and the work and answered lots of questions on Quora. And every now and then my profile would say, hey, here's a link to my email list. I wouldn't usually do it in my answers because I didn't want to seem salesy or like I was trying to push someone to do something, but sometimes I would. But definitely in my profile, I would have a link to sign up for my email list. Another great place, Twitter threads. Let's say you have top 10 ways to be more charismatic. Make that a thread on Twitter. And there are various tools like Typefully where you can make your Twitter threads. Or I just use Twitter to make my Twitter threads. And you can even boost those Twitter threads with a small ad budget. Not necessary, but you can. And at the end of a Twitter thread, you can say, if you like this thread, if you like the ideas of this thread, sign up for my email list at this link. And again, you provide a link to your Substack email list. Similarly with Reddit, just be a participant in the community on Reddit. Reddit is not like Quora where you can provide value by answering people's questions, but you just become part of the community. You join the groups that are related or the subreddits that are related to your topic, and you post regularly so people get to know you, and you develop what's called good karma on Reddit. And gradually, again, people will gravitate to your email list. By the way, even if you don't have an email list, all of these are good ideas, except instead of pointing people to your email list, you mention your book or you provide a link to your book. Like you do a Twitter thread and you say, if you like this topic, you can read more about it. Here's a link to my book just published. Be great if you bought it. Be great if you review it. Always ask for people to review it. Another great source of book sales and potential book sales are going on podcasts. So for instance, let's say you wrote a book about the greatest con men in history and the 100 greatest cons in history. There are plenty of podcasts that would love to have you on as a guest. True crime, for instance, is the highest ranking category in podcasts. So there would be just a ton of podcasts that would love to have you on. And because, again, you're in charge of your marketing, there's ways you can offer podcasters and podcast listeners deals on buying your book. You can make a podcaster an affiliate. So if a podcast listener comes to your website and buys your book off of your website and uses an affiliate code that given to them by the podcaster, then you can split the revenues a little bit with the podcaster. So Google affiliate deals. There's a lot written about this. And you can use a site like gumroad.com, GUMROAD.com, to directly sell your book off of your own website, as well as on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Apple Books, and so on. So what if you can't get on any podcasts? Well, you can always get on a podcast if through what I call reciprocity. Start your own podcast. So if you wrote, again, a book about the greatest cons in history, start a podcast called The Greatest Cons in History and talk about them. You could talk about the cons you wrote about. You could talk about new ones you discover. You could talk about how to con people and talk about Bernie Madoff or whatever you want. But start your own podcast and ask other podcasters to come on and share their stories. And when they come on, you could say, hey, would it be okay if I send you my book, The 100 Greatest Cons in History, or The 30 Greatest Cons in History? Of course, they're going to say yes. And then when they're looking for guests, you're the first one who comes to mind. Remember, the person who writes the book always gets invited before the person who doesn't write the book. So the best way to get invited on podcasts is to write a book. Second best way is to start your own podcast and have podcasters come on your podcast, and then you offer to send them your book. Now, how do you start a podcast? Well, that's really the topic for another course, which I will do. But suffice to say, you can set up really cheaply a very simple kind of podcast and get it started from scratch fairly quickly. There's plenty of places you could Google to find out how to set up a podcast quickly. But there are best practices, but going on other people's podcasts is a great way to sell books. So another way is public speaking. So let's say you've written a book on how to negotiate better, or the top 20 scientifically proven ways to negotiate better. Well, guess what? You can now be a public speaker to talk about negotiation. You send your book out to conference organizers, send your book out to companies. Maybe you sign up with a speaking agent. You don't have to hire a speaking agent. If they like you, they'll hire you or they'll represent you. Meaning, give a couple of free talks. Give a talk at the local college. Give a talk at the church. Find places to give some talks make some videos, maybe give a talk at a TEDx, like apply to many TEDx's and try to give a unique sort of talk, a story that maybe comes from your book or from your own experience about, persuasion or negotiation, talk at a TEDx, put together a reel, send it out to speaker agencies and see if you can get represented by a speaker agency. And who knows, maybe you build a career public speaking, but certainly public speaking is a great way to sell your book. Not only because everybody who listens to you speak might buy your book, but maybe if a company hires you to speak at a corporate retreat, you could say, look, I'll come, but you have to buy 300 copies of my book or 1,000 copies of my book, however many people will be in the audience. So public speaking is a great way to market your book. So we've talked about the best way, which is email lists, but I forgot to mention not just your email list, but other people's email lists. Again, let's say you wrote a book about the economy or investing. There are many newsletters that talk about investing. Maybe on your email list or podcast, you interview the heads of the writers of those newsletters. And again, you say, hey, can I send you a copy of my book? Or just call those people up and say, here's a copy of my book about investing. You wrote about something similar here, and I think you would like my book. Some of them will respond and say, oh, your book's great. They might review your book. But even better is like the example I told you about earlier. They might contact you and say, hey, we'd love to sell your book. Can we do an affiliate deal? Because they want to make money too. That's how they monetize their email list, is they sell things made by other people, but they split the revenues maybe 50-50. Always say yes to those, because those are customers you never would have seen anyway. And you could sell in a PDF format. You could sell paperback, hardcover, audiobook, whatever the email list creator wants to do with you, you could do that affiliate deal. So again, email lists, podcasts, another important place, Facebook. Everybody always says, oh, if I say to a writer, hey, I read your book, they sometimes respond, oh, you and my mom are the only readers. Well, guess what? Their mom is on Facebook. So always post about your book on Facebook. Tell the story of how you wrote the book. Tell, interesting stories that are covered in the book or interesting topics. Remember the 6 U's that we had a whole section about earlier. In your Facebook post about your book, talk about why it's urgent, useful, ultra specific, unique, user-friendly, and whatever the 6th one is. I always forget. And write that on Facebook and boost that post. It'll go to all your friends. It'll go to people you haven't seen since grade school. It'll go to distant cousins. It'll go to connections of connections. Same thing on LinkedIn. And you can prepare this in advance. In anticipation of publishing your book, start writing post after post about the topic. Maybe stories you didn't include in the book, maybe sample sections from the book. Again, that's why it's good to have more ideas written down than you actually write about in the book. And we've talked about that in an earlier video as well. So start writing on LinkedIn, build your audience. You could boost posts on LinkedIn. You could boost posts on Facebook or Twitter threads on Twitter. On Quora, be there every day answering questions that are related to the topic of your book. Find the questions that are most followed on Quora and provide answers for those. So that will make your name rise up fairly quickly. And again, you can always have a link on your profile to your email list or to link directly to the book or whatever. And again, I just want to remind you, whatever your book topic is, there's probably some good niche websites out there about that topic. Like if it's military history, or you wrote about public speaking, or you wrote about baseball, or you wrote about habits, or you wrote about skepticism, or anything. There are websites dedicated to the same topics, and always offer to write for them. Now, if you write a blog post for one site, can you write that same blog post for another site? 100% yes. And this sounds surprising, but you can always plagiarize yourself. In all the years I've been doing this, no one has ever said to me, hey, you wrote for that one site. You can't put that post on this other site. You already put this on LinkedIn. You can't put this on militaryhistory.com because it's already on LinkedIn. Or you already answered this on Quora. You can't put it on, Forbes.com or whatever. You can always plagiarize yourself. You know why? Because no one reads all the different websites. Nobody's even noticed. One time I had the exact same article on the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, and in one of my books. So nobody noticed or said anything. And I'm not saying do unethical behavior. I'm saying if you believe in your story and you believe in the book and that it's helpful to people, then it's your duty to get the word out to as many people as possible. So again, to summarize, email lists, not just yours, but others. And don't forget the techniques to build your email list, which in itself is the topic of another course. Podcasts, Facebook posts, Quora answers, Twitter threads, LinkedIn, Medium, niche websites, public speaking. I'll talk briefly about publicity ideas. If you prepare enough in advance, sometimes you can have ideas that generate publicity. So for instance, before my book, Choose Yourself, came out, this was in 2013, Bitcoin was just becoming a thing that people knew about. So I created a Bitcoin-only store, probably the first Bitcoin-only bookstore ever, and I sold only one book in it, which was Choose Yourself. So I sold Choose Yourself for 1/10 of a Bitcoin. A whopping 70 people came to the website and bought the book for 1/10 of a Bitcoin, and I sent them a PDF. Okay, 70 sales is not a lot, but 1/10 of a Bitcoin was worth $6 then and is worth, $1,800 now. But even more importantly, CNBC was a TV channel just getting interested in what is this Bitcoin thing. So I went on CNBC to explain why I was selling my book a month before the official publication, why I was selling it on this other website for Bitcoin only. And I remember the anchor said to me, did you just do this to get publicity? And I said, well, look, I'm on national TV, so I guess it worked. Another publicity I had that I used for Choose Yourself is I wrote in the very introduction, hey, I want people to read this book, but I don't want to give it away for free because I know people value what they pay for. If you could buy this book and prove to me that you've read it, then I would be happy to give you your money back. Some of my friends were worried, oh, you're going to lose money on this book because, Amazon would take a cut but I'd have to give the full price back. And people told me 100% of people are going to want their money back. Well, less than 1% of people wanted their money back. And I limited it to the first month. In the first month, 60,000 copies were sold and about 400 people wanted their money back. I was selling it on Kindle for 99 cents. Some of them were hardcover, but most of those people were 99 cents people. I had my kids in an assembly line, writing checks and mailing them through the physical mail. And we gave a little bit of money back. I basically said, in order to get money back, you have to prove you read the book. Well, how are they going to prove it? The best way to prove it is if they wrote a review. You're not allowed to directly say, I'll pay you to write a review. You're not allowed to directly say, I'll give you your money back if you write a review. But people figured it out for themselves. That's the best way to prove I read the book. So the book quickly got a lot of reviews. And more reviews means more sales later because people trust the books that have a lot of reviews. If you can get good testimonials, particularly if you can get testimonials from authority figures, this is a great thing. Another thing to consider in terms of that is, can someone who's an authority figure in your area write the foreword for your book? That's often a good way to generate some sales. People who are fans of that person and who are searching that person will find your book. So this is a sampling of ideas for marketing. Again, there's no magic formula to sell millions of copies of your books, but I will tell you, finally, the absolute best way to market your first book, write a second book.
Pluto TV has all the shows and movies you love streaming for free. That means laughter is free with gut-busting comedies like The Neighborhood, Boomerang, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Bueller. Mystery is free with countless cases to crack from Criminal Minds, Tracker, and Matlock.
I'm a lawyer, like the old TV show.
And thrills are free with heart-pumping hits like The Walking Dead and Pulp Fiction. Correct the mundo. Feel the free Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.